Well, welcome to the third of 4 training sessions based on the product Lutheran Service Builder. Today's topic that we're covering is presentations and presentation formats, mainly dealing with PowerPoint presentations for your church's Sunday morning services. My name is Tim Burke, and I'll be your presenter today. I'm a software support technician at Concordia Technology Solutions. And supporting us today in the presentation is my colleague, Taylor Brown. She's also a software support technician on the team, and she'll be behind the scenes answering questions throughout the presentation when you type them into your questions window. We'll talk about that in a minute. All right, this is, as I said, the third of 4 training sessions. On Monday, we covered service planning and global search. That got us from the calendar view in Lutheran Service Builder into a service plan where we pulled together a group of resources that we would use in organizing or putting together an order of service. And that's how far we got on Monday. Then on Tuesday, we talked about bulletins and bulletin formats. We brought in those resources that we have on the service plan and then placed them into their appropriate place in the order of service, and then produced a bulletin from that, an export to Microsoft Excel. So today is the next step in the series where we talk about PowerPoint presentations, going through the prepare presentation option that's available in the application. And the 4th training that we have coming up tomorrow is on My Worship Resources and other add-ons. That's where we talk about customizing some service elements, and as well as the organist, Concordia organist, the playlist option, and creative worship, and the One and All Rejoice hymnal that was recently published. So we're looking forward to talk about that tomorrow, so make sure that you attend if you're interested in that area. But today, we are focusing in on presentations and presentation formats. Few housekeeping notes just to make here as I plan for 50 minutes for presentation. And we'll see if we can get the presentation to be around there. I've often gone to the full hour. These presentations originally started at about 2 hours long, but that gets a little bit lengthy. We're trying to cut the content down a little bit to fit it in within the hour. So we'll plan on that, and we'll allow for some time at the end for questions. In the past couple sessions, there have been a lot of questions that have been asked, and I may pull a few of those out and answer those live. We'll have to see how things go. But throughout, well, I do want to also mention too that attendees are muted. That way we can get through the presentation without any interruption. But I do want you to ask questions throughout the presentation. And that's what the questions window is for on your side of the interface. And that's why we have Taylor helping us out here as support. And Taylor, thank you for serving in that capacity today. And then as a reminder, recordings will be shared of these webinars, I believe after the series is complete. So you might have to give us a couple days to edit those recordings and get them posted, but you'll get emailed a link to each of the 4 if you registered for those 4. If you registered for 1 or 2, then you'll get a link to those 2 that you registered for. All right, our training goal for today is by the end of today, you will know how to prepare a complete presentation and then export it from Lutheran Service Builder. The outline of today's content is we're going to talk about inserting, selecting, and removing elements from the PowerPoint or the presentation slide deck. We'll also talk about changing how elements appear within the slides themselves. We'll also talk about customizing your presentation formats and then exporting that presentation out as a PowerPoint presentation. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Let me bring up my online Lutheran Service Builder account. All right, and let me maybe magnify this just a little bit, make it a little bit larger. There we go. So we've arrived here at the Lutheran Service Builder application, and that, if you can read it on your side, the URL is here at the top, app.lutheranservicebuilder.com. And we arrive on a calendar. In the upper right corner is the sign in option, and we'll click on that, and I'll sign in today into my account with my email, my password, and clicking sign in. So we arrived here in the current month of June. If you've been with us the last two sessions, we've been working with the Sunday service for next Sunday, June 18th. We've got the third Sunday after Pentecost service, and then we copied that service, and I just made a note of that being, let's say, for an 11 a.m. service. Maybe you've got an early service and a late service, and there's just some minor changes for those services. So you can certainly do that type of thing where you create a service and then just copy it so that most of your selections are there. You just tweak it a little bit further for that late service or that additional optional service. So we'll work with those two services. I'll click on the third Sunday after Pentecost service that we've been working with the last several days. Just a brief review. We've talked about how the propers for this particular service or this Sunday are available here with this tab. By clicking there, you've got all of your readings, the psalm, the epistle, gospel, and introit, collect of the day, gradual verse, and hymn of the day. And so you can use that for preparation. This is also available to be viewed on phone, on your smartphone. So you could review propers there as well. That works out real well. The next step in the process is going to the service plan. That's what we worked with on Monday. And we pulled together our readings that would be used in the service, some of the hymns that we plan to use in the service. We also chose our order of service, Divine Service Setting 3. There's a place here to add additional rites like baptism or marriage. There is also a place here for usage and how many times this service might be used on a weekend. If you've got an early and late service, then it would be used 2 times, and your usage is automatically reported on the back end. That's something that you don't have to worry about. And then there's a spot down here for notes. So we talked about people at your church might be collaborating together on services, the pastor, the secretary, the organist, or music director. And so you can leave little notes here for each other, possibly highlighting certain things that you've added to the service or certain communications you want to share with each other. And then yesterday we jumped from that second step here then to the third step of preparing a bulletin. I'll just go there briefly and show you that, let's see, I might have added a couple of rubrics here after the fact. So let me remove those, but we've got the confession and absolution followed by a hymn. And then we just went right on down through the service, making some selections for the way that it appears in your bulletin. And so that might be one of the steps that you take in the process of building your service for a weekend. And then that would follow possibly with today's topic of creating a PowerPoint presentation. So if we go back to the previous view of the service plan, let's go use the menu here. I did want to also show that you can just simply click on the link here in Prepare Presentation. That would take you directly to that view. But once you are in this view, or really the bulletin view as well, you do still have the drop-down menu here in the upper right where you can access any of those areas as needed. So we've arrived here in the presentation format view. On the left side right away, you'll notice that there is a scrolling slide deck, very similar to the way PowerPoint is built. And then here in the main part of the screen is where the individual slides will show. But let's talk about what is on the menu navigation bars here at the top. We did this as well for bulletin formats, and it's very similar. So for those of you who attended yesterday, a lot of this might be review because it uses that same type of logic and design here in presentations as it does in bulletins. Clicking on the cross here at the top will just get you right back to the calendar. So that's kind of like the home position. Let's go back into our service and prepare presentation. Next to that on the navigation bar is an undo and redo arrows. So if you make a mistake, you can undo what you last clicked, added, deleted, etc., and undo that. Or after the fact of undoing it, you might decide, oh, wait a minute, I do want to keep it, and you can click the redo arrow, and that would bring back that recent change that you undid. Then we have a couple tabs here. By default, it will open up to the document tab, and that's the main tab that you'll do most of your work in. And clicking on that tab, there will be a specific toolbar here where I'm floating over that is kind of dedicated or appropriate for the document tab. If we then click over to the right, if we were wanting to insert something else into our order of service, we can click on insert, and you'll notice that the toolbar underneath that tab is then different, or it's appropriate for the insert feature. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on too, but let's go back to the document tab. So what we have here on the document tab is the very first tool on the toolbar is the export option that will show you can either export a presentation in the form of a Microsoft PowerPoint presentation or a MediaShout 6. Now MediaShout 6 version is a little bit dated. They now have come out with 7, and I think they might have even released version 7.5. But there was a big jump in the way things work between MediaShout 6 and 7. And so at this point in time, we have an export for MediaShout 6 at this point. If we don't have a whole lot of churches that are using MediaShout, so we haven't put in the resources to create an export for MediaShout 7, but let us know if you're using MediaShout 7 and you'd like to have that added into the application. The first step is letting us know that you would like to see that's what you are using. But the majority of the churches are currently using PowerPoint. So that's the main export option that people use. Next to that export button is the presentation format. And we covered this yesterday with bulletins. This is the same place of bulletin formats. When you click on the drop down, you'll be able to choose from a number of different presentation formats. There's mainly 2 that you are given by default, the basic and the iron. I've got a few others that I custom made here, 3 others. And we'll also look at possibly making a format today, a format or 2 that we might use today. Next to the presentation format option is an edit button, and that allows us to edit whatever presentation format we're in. So if you happen to apply a format to your slide deck and there's something that you want to change for the future, you can simply click the edit button and it will take you to the edit view for presentation formats, and we'll go into that a little bit on the latter half of today's session. Next to that is the order of service, and so you can click on the drop down here and change your order of service from what you planned in your service plan and kind of override that. But we pulled in Divine Service Setting 3, that's what we had on our service plan, but you can see here that there are a number of different orders of service that you can change this particular presentation to if need be. A lot of these will look familiar to you. They're categorized: seasonal services, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, prayer rites, daily prayer for individuals and families, seasonal rites, Ash Wednesday, there's Holy Baptism. So those are all orders of service that you can change here within the presentation format. And then any changes that we make to one of the standard orders of service here, if we wanted to modify it because maybe our church doesn't do some of the options that are in the standard Divine Service Setting 3, We could take those elements out or add some additional elements in, some additional slides, and then save that modified version for the future. And so we would then, from this day forward, click and select that modified Divine Service Setting 3 instead of the standard one. So those are all the options here available on the toolbar. Let's go ahead then and jump right into our slides. We've got a lot of ground to cover. I'm going to click on this very first slide, and very similar to bulletins, when you click on the slide here on the left, a third tab will open up here letting you know what name that particular slide has as an element in the service. So this is just the heading slide. It is showing the confession and absolution. You can choose to have this slide if you'd like, or just delete it if you don't need it as part of your presentation. You can also move the slide to another spot. This first heading slide you normally wouldn't, but I'll just show you that you can drag and drop slides to different positions. That can be a little bit quirky sometimes, so it might be best to use the move button. And here you just click on move, and you then run your cursor down the slide deck, and you'll see as you go between elements that a blue line will appear with a little blue triangle pointing to where you are going to insert that slide if you were moving it. I might move it right after the slide that says stand, and then we have the slide stand, and the confession and absolution heading slide was then moved from the top of the order of service to that position. But I'll go ahead and try dragging and dropping this. It's a little bit quirky, you know, to get that slide deck to move on its own. That's why I'm saying that might be best to click move. Then you can just quickly scroll to where you want, put your placeholder there, the insert point, and then click, and then that slide will move to that position. With these types of heading slides, you can also just click right on the slide and make any adjustments that you want to what is listed there. You can simply, you know, type in more content if you want, and when you click away from the slide, then that text would also be added to the slide. So just know that you can edit that content that's on a slide right here in the center part of the screen. The next slide we'll jump to is one of the hymns, so I'll click on it. That then changes that third tab to read Hymn of Invocation. And the way hymns are presented here is that there is a stanza to each slide. And so currently on our toolbar here, we've got the first button that says all, and we can then put that caption of 586, preach your word, preach the word, preach you the word, I'm sorry, on all slides, or maybe it's just the first slide. Let's look here at the slide deck. You can see 586, 586 on all slides. If I chose just the first slide, it removes that caption or that hymn title from all the other ones except for that first slide. The button, you can also have a separate slide then for the name of the hymn. So it inserts another new slide at the top of the hymn, gives us the name, and then all those slides after that don't include that hymn title. It's just that first slide. And then just no name, none would remove the name and just go right into the stanzas without identifying the name of that hymn. So you can choose the way you'd like to do that. I think I'll go just with all at the moment. Next to that is you can choose to have the text of the hymn. We can see that here for each of the stanzas that it's just text at this point, or you can click the option to include melody, and then the melody will appear for each of the stanzas as well, as we see that included in those on the left side. Or you can choose none, and that way neither melody nor text will appear. It will just tell your congregation to go to hymn number 586, preach you the word. And then they would use their hymnals instead of the presentation. So we'll go ahead with text at the moment. The next option over is you can choose stanzas. Now, I believe yesterday I might have changed this a bit, but in our session we had chosen, I think, stanzas 1, 3, and 5. And so that would have passed over here to the presentation mode the same way if I hadn't changed it afterwards. but you can certainly make any tweaks to stanzas right here in the PowerPoint or in the presentation view. And then once again, you can move a slide and delete it. We've talked about those options already. And you'll also notice that when I changed this stanza selection here a moment ago, it did also change the slides. And so in this case, we're on slide number or stanza 1, clicking on the second slide, stanza 3, clicking on the third slide, stanza 5. And on that last slide is when it includes the copyright information at the bottom of the slide. Next, we'll go to the next slide down, and that says it's a rubric. Now for PowerPoints, a lot of times the rubrics are just deleted because the congregation will hear pastor say, please stand. You can choose just not to even have this slide then, since it's spoken, or you can keep it in your slide deck. And once again, you can click right here on the slide. And if you'd like to change that a little bit and just say, please stand, instead of the word stand, you can make that adjustment as well on that slide. In this case, I'm just going to delete the rubrics since it will be spoken in our service. The next slide I'll click on is the invocation here. And you'll notice that each element in your order of service has its own slide. That makes it a little bit easier to go through the process of the order of service, but it does then, as you notice, leave a lot of white space on the screen. And so we might be able to take care of that with a background to these slides, which we'll show in the latter half of this training session. But for now, this is the way that we're looking at here with the basic format of the presentation formats. So invocation, that's listed there. We can once again choose that invocation caption to be on all, first, separate, or none. In this case, it is only one slide, so some of these can just be ignored in that case. You have the choice of having text or no text at all. The caption will then be repositioned in the center if you don't have the text. You can edit the slide, which then takes you to My Worship Resources, which we'll be talking about tomorrow, but you can edit to customize the invocation if you'd like, and then move and delete it. Let's keep on moving. Click on the next slide. This is the exhortation showing the responsiveness of that particular element in the service. And once again, those same edit features and options here in the toolbar as the prior element. Here is a kneel stand. This is a rubric. I'm going to go ahead and delete it out of my PowerPoint presentation. The next slide that we click on is the confession of sins. You'll notice though that here on the left side, that through this slide deck, we haven't come to an option yet that had a blue bar on the left. And this is indicating that there is a secondary option for this element in the service. So right now we have the confession of sins as shown, and it's kind of like a group. It's done with two elements. If I click on absolution here, then it shows this is the confession of sins and absolution. Well, let's find out what that secondary option is for this group. I click on the blue bar, and it will expand then another option here of the confession of sins and the declaration of grace. So if you've got a vicar maybe at your church, they would be using the declaration of grace, where pastor would be using the absolution. So it might, if you'd want that particular item, you just click on that, the confession of sins here on the lower half, and it changes those slides to be confession and declaration of grace then instead. We'll go back to the prior one, the one here, the confession of sins, and choose those two. And once again, clicking on the confession of sins, you've got the same tools available on the toolbar as you do the same with the absolution. We've talked about that. Click on stand will remove that rubric in this case. And now we come to the intro it, and we have another blue bar on the left. So we know that there are some other options. In this case, clicking on the intro it itself will display it here in the center of the screen, and it will give us the toolbar for the intro it going across. We've got that same button of whether we want the caption to be on only the first slide, a separate slide on its own, or none. We have the option here of text or none. For the intro, we do have an option for pointing. Now, pointing is these little marks, the vertical bar, and the asterisk showing where where if you're using a psalm tone for chanting, where it changes within the line. I'm not a big, I don't have a whole lot of knowledge about the musician side of things and the chanting, but that's what those marks imply. So if you didn't need the pointing, you could click the button to remove that, and all of those vertical bars and asterisks are then removed, and it's just the text. But if you do include pointing, you do have then the option of including a psalm tone if one of the tones is appropriate for this particular service element. And it's just a matter of scrolling through the different psalm tones here, A through K, and selecting one, and it will put that psalm tone here at the top if you want that on your PowerPoint presentation. You can also just choose none, and it will remove that. Template here doesn't really apply in this case, but we'll show the template option in one of the readings that we get to. Then we have other buttons here, edit, move, and delete, which we're familiar with. So we've got the introit and the Gloria Patri. I can click on Gloria Patri, and in this case, for the Gloria Patri, again, we have caption selection, we have text, but now we have a new button here, melody. So that will put the Gloria Patri with melody on the slide. You can see it in the main view, and then also a smaller preview here as well. And for Divine Service Setting 3, there is the setting option, which is the 4-part harmony. So if you'd rather have that here for this particular liturgy element, you can select that as well. The question that we get quite often is about 4-part harmony for hymns. So let me just touch on that briefly. The hymns only in Lutheran Service Builder only have melody. There's additional copyright needs that are involved when you use the 4-part harmony, and also there's a lot of work that is needed when you're creating the engravings that are used to present the 4-part harmony in a music form. And so at this point in time, we haven't added 4-part harmony yet for hymns. But if it's something, a feature that you would really like to see, just let us know. Development of the product is all kind of, or a lot of it is based on customer feedback. So continue to communicate with us with things that you'd like to see added or features that you might have ideas for. And we'll put it in our feedback database so that we can consider it. All right, let's get back to the order of service. Besides the introit and Gloria Patri, there are some secondary options. So clicking or scrolling down after clicking on the blue line presents a psalm with antiphon, and then also an option just with an entrance hymn. So we could skip all of that and just put another entrance hymn. That way, right after the confession and absolution, we sing another hymn. Or I can click on that selection bar and we could select the psalm with the antiphon, verse 5 in this case. And with the psalm, we've got options like pointing, the selection of the psalm tone as well, which would put that, at the top if needed, and the ability to edit, move, and delete. Let's go ahead and take that off, and let's just stick with the introit and Gloria Patri that we had earlier. Scrolling down a little farther is we got the Kyrie, and so right now that one is by default here on the screen with melody. We might want to make that text for the PowerPoint presentation. There also is that option, 4-part harmony setting, so keep that in mind. Keep on referring to that toolbar after you click on the slide, because these tools will constantly be changing depending on what element you choose. Oh, and I should mention too that as you click on each of these elements, here on the right side, then it will highlight the element that's currently selected, but give you other options. So if we're in Divine Service Setting 3, but if you wanted to use the Kyrie from Setting 1, Setting 2, or Setting 4, you could do that, or the one from Matins, from Vespers. So there's a lot of options here on the right side in the search panel where you can replace the one that's being used. Every single service element you click on, if I clicked on the introit, which I did earlier, that changes over here too, where you could then select introit, gradual, verse, and you have other suggestions for the previous proper week in the one coming up the following week, Proverbs 7. Right now we're in Proverbs 6 at the moment. So, you know, you've got the search panel opening up on the right for suggestions and changes. You've got the toolbar here at the top that's constantly changing, all dependent on the slide that you're clicking on. Let's click on Gloria and Excelsis. We've got the melody, we've got a setting. In this case, we've got another couple options here. So if your pastor maybe prefers not to chant, you might do, because if we do this here as, let's say melody, let's just go with melody. It shows the pastor's part with notes, the congregation's response with notes. Now maybe pastor doesn't want to sing on its own, so you might go with text and setting, which means all of the pastor portions are spoken and the congregation then responds with the organ and the music listed there. So you have the option of text and setting as well as text and melody. So just pay attention to melody or setting here with that combination of spoken pastor parts and congregation responds with singing. All right, then we click on the next item. This is the salutation. And this is for Proverbs 6a. We can go to the text here, and then we've got the responsiveness of that particular slide and the tools on the toolbar up here for that slide. I'm going to click on the rubric sit. We're going to remove that, delete it. Then we come down to one of the readings here. Now, the Old Testament reading, yesterday when we were creating this service, we changed the template used for this reading to be the one with the introduction, meaning that this is spoken. The Old Testament reading is from Exodus chapter 19. Then the content of the reading is here, and we'll continue on in the next slide. And then the third slide here of the reading has the response. So that is what is designated by this template. Right now, we were using the with introduction template, but you can look through the other templates that are available. I mean, there's one for the epistle with introduction, the Old Testament response. So we might use this one instead, which has no introduction. It's just the word content appears here, meaning the reading from the lectionary will go in this position of the content, and then this response will be used. So you'll notice here when I select this template, the introduction now to this Old Testament reading has been removed, and it just gives us the scripture reference and then goes right into the scripture. And then in the second slide, now the response has been combined because there was enough space to include it in slide 2 instead of going to a third slide. And so those options there, just know that the template is how possibly that element is either introduced or maybe it's not introduced, and then how it is the response follows that content. There's also templates for the Holy Gospel, the daily office. I think this might be custom. We created a Gloria Patri template as well. That one's from another webinar. So you can explore what templates are there and click on them and just kind of know which one is there by default before you start clicking away on other template options, since some of them might not apply to the specific reading that you're working with. Go down to the gradual, and we have those options there of including a psalm tone as well. I'm going to remove it this particular time. And we have other options besides the gradual. We have the psalm with antiphon as an option from the Lutheran Service book. So you can make the selection of the psalm or the gradual there. Then we've got Romans, that is telling us that this is the epistle. We can then use a different template if we like. I'll go with, where was that one? Did I pass it? There it is, with introduction for the epistle. So I'll click on that. Now we have the epistle is from Romans chapter 5. And then the epistle is given. It goes down into 3 slides altogether. This is slide 2, slide 3, with that response from our template. Scrolling down, I think I can start making some of these changes a little bit quicker. Now you're getting the idea. We've got the Alleluia here and a couple other options. For the Alleluia, we've got the gospel, including the response here with a melody. I'll keep that there. For this gospel, you'll remember possibly if you were attending yesterday that we had changed the format of our bulletin actually to include the words of Christ in red. That will transfer over into the PowerPoint as well. We could change that in the PowerPoint presentation format, which we'll get to here in a little bit, but that's why the words of Christ are showing up here in red on all of these in the gospel reading slides. And then we've got a melody response here. Then yesterday, we also had plugged in a children's message into our bulletin, so that is carried through to the presentation. If you don't need that slide, as I said, this was added after the fact. We could delete it. And so now that children's message slide is gone. But I also want to show that, let's see, this is right before the Nicene Creed. I also wanted to show that the option up here to insert different elements into your slide deck is also possible here in the presentation view. So let's say that we do want that children's message slide anyway. That is a heading slide. So we'll go ahead and we click the Insert tab from the toolbar. We pick what type of element we want to insert. In this case, it's heading. Then we start hovering our cursor over the slide deck, and you'll see that there should be an insertion point there. Let's go down to this one. There we go. The heading did move right above the Nicene Creed then. And we'll go ahead and just say that this is the children's message. And we can click away from the slide and it changes to a heading. Now in this case, all of our headings put a little like cross in front and behind it. We can change that in the presentation format, which we'll be getting to. But here for every heading slide, it will automatically add that text. If instead we want to insert just a caption slide, we could do that as well. I'll place another one right, well, in this case above it. We can click on the slide and just type in children's message as well. Click away, and you can see the difference here. The heading is a little bit larger font with the lacrosse symbols in front and behind, and then a caption slide is a little bit of a smaller font used. We can always enlarge that in the format as well, but this just shows you the difference in inserting these two options, either heading or caption. You can always insert extra rubrics. You can insert another hymn into your PowerPoint slide deck, another reading, a prayer, a proper, or just a common element, something that is used different places. And then also a rite. A rite is an option here too. So you could insert the rite of baptism somewhere in your service as well. But I'll go ahead and let's see, I must have had insert, caption there. Let's remove that slide. I'm going to remove this heading slide, delete it. There we go. So now we're back down to after the children's message, we have the Nicene Creed with an option bar. We click on that, and it shows that we could choose the Apostles' Creed or the Athanasian Creed instead. So that's all available. I'll keep it with the Nicene Creed. In order to select it out of that group of 3 options, I do need to click on Nicene Creed. We'll remove sit as a rubric. We've got our hymn with melody in this case. I'll leave that there because we need to keep moving. The sermon slide is a caption slide, and so that's here. You could, if pastor would like to include it on the slide, you could put a dash and then put the topic of the sermon here and the name that you have for that particular Sunday, and then click away, and then that name will appear on the slide as well. You could type even more information than that, maybe a little bit about it as a possibility. And then we continue on here. Once again, you know, you've got the toolbar options here at the top. You've got the search panel here on the right for replacing any one of these elements. I'll click on the rubric. We've got the offertory here with melody. We've got a rubric of sitting. We've got the offering. You could have that in the slide deck just to let people know what's happening in the service, visitors, or you could take it out. I'll leave it there for now. I'll remove all of these rubrics. Then we come to the prayer of the church. And this prayer of the church is from the Let Us Pray free subscription. That is available, and you can set that and subscribe to that under settings here in the upper right corner. And that way, then the Let Us Pray prayers that are published by LCMS, or in other words, the prayer of the church, can be automatically inserted in your service every week. And so that's what this section is. Let's see, then we've got the preface. We've got the proper preface in its full form, or the option is its abbreviated form. So you can have either one of those. And then we have the Sanctus, and in 2 slides, the Lord's Prayer with melody in 2 slides. The words of the Lord here in with melody. And again, we could remove the melody. It's just, I want to keep moving here. We've got a sit, a rubric, I'll remove. We've got a slide just naming the distribution. You could keep that in there if you'd like. You will notice in this particular part of the service that there is a blue bar here, and then it actually is like a light gray bar. This is actually a group of like rubrics explaining that part of the service. If you choose and click on that and then click delete, you have the option to remove just the distribution slide or the whole group of slides that are indicated here on the left side to the dismissal. So you could do a removal or delete of either of those 2 options. This is kind of like a rubric in a way, so we'll remove that. Here is another rubric and not the group. Then we've got a distribution hymn where we only selected stanzas 1 and 2. We've got another distribution hymn where again, it was stanzas 1 and 2 that we selected. And then I actually added a 3rd hymn after the fact. We got a rubric, let's delete it. Just keep on going down here, Thanksgiving, post-communion collect. Again, you've got melody, settings, all of those options on the toolbar. Let me continue on. We've got a hymn of To Depart on Eagle's Wings 727 with a number of verses selected there, our stanzas. Let's just say we remove stanzas 2 and 4, but we leave the refrain there. And so we've got the refrain as the first slide, stanza 3, and then the refrain. So in that case, I don't know the hymn well enough. Oh, here's one. Yeah, I'm sorry. So it's 4 slides. So you've got stanza 1, the refrain. You click on the 3rd slide, that's stanza 3, and then the 4th slide is actually then the refrain again. So that works out perfectly in our slide deck. And then the last slide is just the acknowledgments of all copyright. Once you've gone through your service and you've adjusted and made all of those changes in your slide deck using the tools that are available on the top of each element, inserting any other elements or deleting, then we can go back to the document tab here at the top to then we could choose our format, which we'll talk about in a moment. Basic is what we'll use. We just simply click export, click on PowerPoint, and it's pulling together all of those slides. Should come up here in a moment. The button is a little bit grayed out, so you know that it's still working. And there it is. So I'll go ahead and put this on the desktop, and we'll open this up in PowerPoint. I'll bring it over. and show you that this is our PowerPoint then presentation. This window in the middle of the screen is PowerPoint now that's open, and it's not Lutheran Service Builder, that's behind us here. But this is the slides then for PowerPoint. So you should be familiar with that if you've used PowerPoint already. Now let's talk about the actual presentation format. We can click here and click Edit, which would take us directly to the our presentation formats with Basic selected, showing us the current format that we're working with. Let me show another example of this though. We're going to close presentation formats. So we got there by clicking here on Edit for this particular format. Now, another way to get to the same place is just to click on your settings icon, your gear, go down to presentation formats, and we arrive at that very same location. Right now, though, here on the left, we would need to pick which presentation format we might want to edit. Let me click here on Basic once again. So this is the Basic format, which is just a white background with black lettering. Then another one that's included by default is Iron. Iron is a format that has like this charcoal gray background with a little symbol or emblem here on the left side for all of the slides. And so that's called Iron. Those are the two that are supplied with Lutheran Service Builder as an application. Now I've got 3 others here that I've created just to give you an idea of what they look like for to get your creative juices flowing. I've got one with a reverse basic. Basic here is a white background with black lettering, and then I created and just reversed the colors and then have a black background with white lettering. And then we are able to add backgrounds. So just to give you some ideas, here's a background that has like a parchment type of backdrop to it, and then an image there in the lower right corner. So the order of service would appear here, and I chose black lettering in this case, and every slide is on that parchment type background with the symbol. And then there's another one here that I just, again, started with Basic with a theme of kind of like an evening picture. And so it's got some stars, and we've got what it would look like with a hymn. I've got a caption here where that's reddish color or pink or melon maybe with white lettering. And I'm not any kind of artistic presentation creator, so please pardon my colors here if you don't particularly care the way the slide looks. But it was just more as an example in one of my other webinars at one point in time. So those are some of the things you can do, but let's go back to Basic. And in fact, when you choose a presentation here on the left, it will show here as we saw in the center. And then we've got a bunch of options here on the right that I want to cover. So let's say that you want to start with a brand new presentation format. So we can click the button in the lower left corner of New Format, and it allows us to base this format on those 2 defaults, either the Basic or the Iron. The Iron gives us that one grayish background with the emblem on the left. I want to start with Basic, so it's a clean slate. So it adds then another format here on the right. I can click on that name and just, let's say, let's call it webinar. Let's remove the T, webinar format. And 2023. And so now we've got a new format that we're starting. Now the slides that are showing here in the center of the screen are just examples. It's not the service we've been working with today. It's just content so that you can, and it includes every kind of content. Here's a couple slides of the hymn. Here's some liturgy. There's also propers that are shown just as a sample. And so you're able to then change what you see here in the center of the screen using edit features here on the right. You'll notice at the top there are 3 tabs. You can change stylistically how your presentation format looks. You can click on the layout tab and access page layout of your format. And then you can click on the 3rd tab, which is the content that we've kind of gone through from the rest of this training earlier. We kind of went through and applied changes to the individual elements. Well, here's where you can make some changes for all of the elements, that it would affect all hymns, all liturgy elements in your order of service, and all propers. So we'll talk about that here in a minute. Let's go to style first. This is stylistically how the slide will look. Here at the top, you can have just a white background. You can click in the white dot to change your background. Maybe we want to give it something here, and there's a bar here on this color spectrum on the right, and you just slide it, and wherever you see some coloring that you may like some of the shades given, let's pull something here, and then you can click anywhere, you know, here in the square on the right to get that shade wherever your cursor pointer is pointing. So let's get something maybe a little bit more muted in green. I think I used a shade like this in the last webinar series as well, but something just a little more, you know, pastel or something, not something too dark. That's just, yeah, that's gross. So something more muted pastel. And so this might be the background that you want. And we could keep the black lettering, that would look fine. Or we can change that. We can upload an image, which I'll do in a minute. But let's talk about styles here within the body, the text of the body. We could change our character that we're using. I think yesterday we used Candera, so I might change the font to be Candera. So Candera now is the font used for the body of the slides. Any element in the service that has body, it now uses Candera. We could bold it, we could italicize it. You can see it changing here. We can underline it all. You know, you can make those types of changes here on the right to the characters. You can also then affect the paragraph. Right now it's left justified. If we want it centered, then it's centered in the slide. If we want it right justified, the body is right justified. And here to justify it, it's more of a, it's I guess back more to the left in this case. Then you have the ability down here to change the spacing before the paragraph or after the paragraph. And you also have the ability to indent it further from the left or indent it further from the right. And then this would be line spacing. So if you wanted more space between the lines, as I'm increasing the size, you can see how that's affecting the stanza. And that would also affect things like readings. It would just put more spacing between the lines. So that's what we've done to the body. Now we can go to another section, the headings. And let's see, I don't know if I have a heading here on any of these slides that's showing. So I don't have a heading to show, but let's go ahead and change that to Candera as well. And then we'll go to captions. And so we do have a caption here, 655. We'll change that to Candera. And so that's changed the way that looks. It is bold, it's just not quite as bold as the previous font. We can change the font color on any of these as well. You could change it to red, and you've got your caption now in red. We could have done that in the body as well. So know that your font color selector is there. We'll stick with the black color in this case. And then once again, you have paragraph or alignment. You have line spaces before paragraphs and after, justifying things, aligning, left indent, right indent, line spacing, and what's this last one? First line indent. So there are different options for different sections. You do also have the option to put in text before or after. This is where I think for headings, if you put a plus sign and then a space and then the text after a space and then a plus sign would give you that little like cross type of image before and after the caption. I'll go ahead and remove those though. That would be more appropriate for a heading. We can click save just to save the work that we've done so far as we're working through this. And let's see, caption, rubrics, we could change to Candera as well. Yeah, I'm running behind again today a little bit. I apologize. All right, so we've now changed. Let's go ahead and I think we need to do that with copyrights too. Let's change the font and just be consistent across the board with the Candera font. So now as we scroll through this sampling of slides, all of the fonts will be showing Candera, including this copyright information there, which I just changed. And now we've changed this style of this particular webinar format that we're building. We can go to the layout. And another thing you might want to do really first when you come here to the presentation formats is come to this layout slide and set your slide size first. You want the height and the width of your resolution to match what's in your church sanctuary. So if you're using a widescreen TV or some kind of projector, I'm sure the resolution is going to be different than this 768 by 1024. So I actually should have probably come here first, and let's say that the height of it was 1080. This is a common one by 1920. And so if that's what your church uses for projectors or for monitors out there in your sanctuary, you'll want to first make that change under layout, because you can see how now things are affected. I would need to go back to my styles and choose larger fonts for the body, larger font for the heading by coming down here and increasing the font size. And so that will affect things greatly, you know, now that I've changed it to a wide screen. Let's see, if I reset this, I think it will go back. Yeah, let's keep the same resolution I had so that I don't have to go back and make all those changes. But just be aware of that. Set your slide size in the layout tab. First thing you do when you get to the presentation formats. Next, margins. You can increase the top, bottom, left, and right margins. And then click save your progress. And then we go to content. If you wanted headings to be visible, you can click on the checkbox there, and then it will include headings like confession and absolution. It will give you those sides for the presentation as a whole. So, you know, earlier when in the presentation, I removed all rubrics manually. I clicked on each slide and said delete. What I could have done is just come to the presentation format I plan to use, click that button, and it would have done it for me then. And so this is how the presentation format kind of works hand in hand with your presentation order of service too. You can make a lot of those changes globally here. You can choose to make headings visible or not as a whole. Then we get down to the hymn section where you can make hymns visible or not. You can have the content show up as text or with melody by default, or none. And neither of those would show. And so you can do that globally. And instead of changing all 5 of your hymns in a service one by one with melody, just come here to the presentation and turn them all into displaying melody. You have caption placement by default. Does it appear on every slide, first slide, separate slide, or none? We had those options on the toolbar as well, but you can set it here globally, so you can only have to do it one place. Caption format, is it the name as we have here, or is it the role? So instead of the hymn name, it now just says hymn of invocation, the role it has in the service, or maybe it's a combination of the two, the role and name. So then you have hymn of invocation, 655, Lord, keep us steadfast in your word. I'll go just to the name in this case. Show stanza numbers. You can see here, let's see, will this remove it in the engraving? I don't think so. I think that mainly applies to text. So let's go back to text here. We've got a verse number, stanza 1. If I click on to remove stanza numbers, then it will remove 1, 2, 3, etc. And then omit the number from the caption is another option. You can see the number 655 is here. If we click the option to remove it, that removes the 655 from the slide if that's not needed. So those options you have here in the format of the presentation. We have the same types of things in the liturgy, whether it's visible or not, text, melody, or setting if it's available, caption placement, using the symbols for the speakers. Let's get to an element here that has There was something with more. There we go. If I remove the symbols, the P and the C will be exchanged. Well, they'll just be removed, I guess, in that case. Oh, no, I'm sorry. In this case, it will then spell out pastor and congregation. So you may want those symbols if you're used to seeing the P and the C. Emphasize decision fields. Let's see, is there a slide here that shows? Yeah, here the remembrance of baptism. Emphasizing the decision fields are here with an underline. If you don't need to emphasize it, uncheck the box and it takes the underline away. But that helps draw attention to where the name of the person will be inserted into what is being spoken. Then finally are the propers, whether you want them visible or not. That would be all of your readings. Some of the readings or some of the propers include intro and psalms. So do you want music for those or the setting for those? If you want the caption to be on every slide, first slide, separate slide, etc. You can choose to globally show chant pointing, to globally show verse numbers for your readings. If we have a reading here, let's see, gradual here, Matthew. Here are the verse numbers 1, 2, and 3. If we remove them, we'll take them out of the PowerPoint slide. Show headings of propers or not, and then show words of Christ in red. If we choose that option, then it will show in red on the slides as well. So those are your options. We can click save. And then now we have a webinar format that we've designed for our needs. I can close that. We can go back to our order of service here in the presentation view. And now we can choose from that new format that now appears in the drop-down list. I click that. It applies the green background, the new font of Candera on all our slides, and we can review that slide deck. If it all looks good, go back to the document tab and export this out to PowerPoint. And we'll have to give it a moment here while it's working to bring those slides together. And there it is. I'll put it on my desktop here. And we'll wait for it. There it appears. Bring it over from my other monitor. And here it is in PowerPoint with our greenish background and any of the other changes that we make to that PowerPoint presentation. Now, just a quick thing. I know I'm at the top of the hour here. I did want to show, let's go back to presentation formats and just show how you can upload some backgrounds. So let's create yet another format based on basic. Let's call this one webinar format number 2, or better yet, with background. And so we want to create a webinar format that uses a background. And for today, I'm going to use a background that we've got available through our Creative Worship subscription. So this is something that you won't have by default, but if you are interested in Creative Worship, what Creative Worship provides, and we'll talk about this tomorrow as well, is some weekly orders of service as an option, and then it also includes backgrounds and digital paraments and things. So in this particular format, we're going to upload one of those Creative Worship backgrounds. We come to the Style tab here in the upper right corner, come down here to Image, Upload. I've got it already set where this coming Sunday, Proper 6, has a theme to it in Creative Worship, and these 3 options here are the different backgrounds. So we have another one with, if you can barely see the image in the lower right corner, that's an option. Then just the plain background is kind of a light blue, or here's the same light blue background with a faded image in the center. Let's choose that one. I'm going to click that image. It's a JPEG image. That's what I'm uploading, and that should appear here in a moment. Then there it is. It's a faded image of Gates here, and this would be then the format for this coming Sunday that we could set as a background. You know, the black lettering is good. In this case, it brings out all of the spoken parts up front. We could change that to a different color if we'd like, but for purpose of timing, we'll just go with this particular background. We can then close, change our service to the new one, webinar format with background, and there the new background has been uploaded. So that's the same way that that I did with some of these other ones that I've done in the past. You know, we could simply, it keeps all of our content and the changes that we made, it just changes the format. Now this is that reverse black background, white lettering. I could change it to the wide one with the grapes. And this is our service here on the side, on the left side. And so you'll see that you can adjust the type to fit within the area, not overlapping the image at all. This is a good example of that. And so you can see simply how you can get the advantage, gain the advantage of having backgrounds and kind of being a little more creative with your presentation, other than just having the standard basic presentation of white background with black lettering. All right, let's see. I think that's about what I wanted to cover today. I know we went a little over the hour. Let's get back to our slideshow here. So to kind of round things out here at the end, there are ways of reaching out to us for software support. You can access our online help center by clicking on the information center icon in the lower right corner of the Lutheran Service Builder application. That will open up a little window there where you can search our help articles online. You can also access the in-app chat option there too. As long as someone is in the chat channel at the time, and this is mostly available, as you can see here on the screen, Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 5. We have a technician or more that are in the chat channel, and we can help you via that way if you are comfortable with chatting. And you're not chatting with a computer or a bot, you're actually chatting with me, with Taylor, and some of the other technicians. You can also call us at 1-800-346-6120, same hours. And you can also email us at support@cts.cph.org. So that slide is available with those contact points. All right, our training, we finished off 3 of the sessions so far. Tomorrow, Thursday, is the one on custom resources, My Worship resources, and other add-ons that are available. Time for some questions and answers. I may look at the list. I'm so thankful for Taylor, who's answered most of these questions that have come through. So once again, thank you, Taylor, for all of your hard work there. I know that's a stressful job when questions are just coming in, bombarding you all at once from different attendees. So thank you. You can type in any additional questions you might have here at the end. I'll review some and see if there's any that I might want to mention. But other than that, please reach out to us with any questions you have via those 4 different methods that we had on the previous screen. Remember, a recording will be emailed, the links to those that you registered for, maybe within 48 hours. I'm not sure how that goes. Just give us a little grace. And if you happen to be watching this video at a later date, down the road, if you're wanting to submit a question, please send it into the email there listed on the screen, support@cts.cph.org. For the rest of you, if you have to get going, I do want to thank you for your time today and look forward to possibly seeing you again tomorrow, and have a great day. And for those of you who might want to just stick around a little bit longer, I'll look at some of the questions, but I don't want to hold you up too long since we're over the hour right now. But thank you once again for attending. Let's go look at some questions. Yeah, some people have already left. They're just a lot of just simple questions. Can this session be rewatched? Yeah, the videos will be made available. Yeah, friend Seska asked the question here. This would be a good one, just for those of you who are still watching. She asks, can you delete saved presentations or bulletins created under the uncategorized section? So if we go back to our presentation formats, the ones that we created today, it's simply just clicking on whichever presentation you want. Let's go with this one I made at the very end, and then clicking the delete this format here at the bottom. You can also use the button here to copy a format. So you might have something here that you like, you want to copy it and then tweak it a little bit further, but you don't want to lose that original. So you could do that with the copy option, but certainly all I have to do is click delete this format and it deletes it then from the collection there. I can do that also with bulletin formats. I know that that's not our topic of today, but clicking on bulletin formats will show us bulletins here. I made this one yesterday, Tim's webinar demo format. And once again, just click the delete button. We'll ask you to confirm that you do want to delete it. And oh, it's being used in one service. So deleting it may change the way that service looks if I've used this format in the past. So this was good to show too. This is the type of notifications you'll get. So I'll just cancel this one and won't delete it. Good question. As someone asked, if you change the format in the presentation, does it affect the bulletin? Let's see. Yeah, off the top of my head, let's see. I know that I removed all the rubrics. Let's go to document here. All right, so this is still our PowerPoint presentation. Let's go back up here to prepare bulletin. And I believe it does. So yeah, I'm not seeing any of the rubrics stand or anything that we moved in the PowerPoint presentation. So what you can imagine, let's go back to the service plan to kind of get this idea. So, you know, we've got the propers kind of step one that you can review. Then you've got the ability to pull your resources together in the service plan. Then usually step three is preparing your bulletin. And, you know, once you've gone through preparing your bulletin and getting things tweaked the way you want it, you then might want to export it out at that point in time, because when you do go to the prepare presentation and you remove the rubrics, it will remove it from the bulletin then as well. So if you didn't get it exported before you made changes to the presentation, it might change that a bit. Now, what you can do as a workaround is in your service, you could, let's see, let's click on that. Let's go to the service plan, go to the bottom and make a copy of the service. We could say the third Sunday after Pentecost, and then change this to presentation. And then this would be my presentation view, where any changes here on the calendar on the left, you can see the original one. I could put third Sunday and in parentheses bulletin, this one third Sunday in parentheses presentation. And that way I could keep a different bulletin service with formatting specific for the bulletin, and then another service that is specifically around presentation, centered around that format. And I believe you can still just, you know, if it's going to be used for two services, have in-person worship set up 2 times for each of the presentation and the bulletin. When it tracks your usage, it's not going to double up on it or anything. It's going to see that you're using that same service just in 2 different formats, I believe is the way to go for that. So that would be my answer to that question. Yeah, we kind of addressed that already. Let's see. Beth asked, do the other divine services have the 4-part harmony? I believe it's only divine service setting 3. I could be wrong, but if my memory serves me, it's out of the 5 divine services, divine service setting 3 has the 4-part harmony. Okay, let's see. Jane asked about the QR code. I know that yesterday, let's go back to the original service. Yesterday during bulletins, we showed an example of creating a QR code for the web view. So let's go to prepare a bulletin. This kind of goes back to prepare a bulletin. Changes that you make to your service then may put a little red dot here on the web view button. That red dot means that there are changes to the service. Do you want to update the web view? So the changes that I did today were mainly for PowerPoint. I might not want to update that web view, but if I do, when you click on it with the red dot showing, it will just have a button here to update your web view. And if you want to update it with those changes, then click on the button, the red dot disappears, and you're back in current status then on that. Hopefully that helps you, Jane. Yeah, Beth asked if we export something and then make changes and export it again, how does that affect usage is I think what she's implying here. Will it be as though we did another service, or does it just go by 1 week? It will. There is some, I guess, logic in the code that will take a look at it, and I think it will just tally up one use for that if it's the same. I can't guarantee you that. I'd have to talk with one of the programming teams, but yeah, I guess you wouldn't necessarily want to go willy-nilly and click export over and over and over again, 10 times on a service. Try to get most of your editing done within the application itself and what you see visually, and keep that to a minimum. Just don't go crazy making exports. Let's see, I'm gonna go down a little bit farther. A lot of these were already answered by Taylor, but I just thought they might be interesting for the rest of you to hear. A lot of people have left. Yeah, I think most of them answered. The one question that wasn't answered yet by Taylor, the person has already left, so I'll follow up with them afterwards. So this is a good place. I know it's about a quarter after, a little over that actually. And so let's go back to our slides here. Just thank you once again for watching. Hope that you found some benefit in picking up some tips today possibly. And we look forward to seeing you possibly tomorrow then for the custom work in My Worship resources and other add-ons. So have a great day. Thank you.